Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. This is called AI in Government, a use case showcase, and I'm really excited about the group that we have gathered. My name is Jake Bell. I am a member of the AI and Modernizing Government team here at the Partnership for Public Service. In case you aren't, I know many of you on the webinar today are deeply familiar with the work of the partnership, but in case you aren't, just wanted to give a quick overview of the partnership and the work that we do at the AI Center for Government. So the Partnership for Public Service is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization focused on building a better government and a stronger democracy. For over 20 years, we've done that by helping our government recruit, empower, and retain our nation's best talent, equipping public sector leaders to serve the public good through our Public Service Leadership Institute, and working to ensure the public trusts and engages with a well-functioning government. Within the partnership, we've launched the AI Center for Government, which this event is part of. At the AI Center, we're committed to fostering AI leadership, talent, literacy across many different areas, strengthening AI talent capacity, empowering AI literacy, and celebrating agencies at all levels of government who are utilizing AI effectively. And in that spirit, we've gathered a great group today to talk about some concrete AI use cases that hopefully will be relevant to many, if not all of you. And to lead us expertly through this conversation, I am going to hand it over to our moderator. Lauren is our Vice President for Public Service Leadership here at the Partnership, and I'll pass it over to you.
Terrific. Thanks, Jake, for everything that's being done at the AI Center here at the Partnership. It's really exciting to be a part of. So I want to introduce three incredibly esteemed panelists who come to this conversation from different perspectives and are going to talk a little bit about their experience in this space and some incredible use cases that they have leveraged to benefit the public. So first is Harrison MacRae. He serves as the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's Director of Emerging Technologies, which seems like a particularly nice title to have and very relevant in this moment. In his position, he focuses on responsible and effective implementation of AI, something that the center is really focused on as well. Prior to joining the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, he was a Govern for America Fellow and also served as the Strategy and Analytics Lead for the Missouri State Government's Division of Personnel. He also brings some additional expertise from his work with startups and civic tech organizations and holds a degree from Stanford University. Our second wonderful panelist is Kendee Yamaguchi. She is the incoming CEO of the Asian Counseling and Referral Service and is a longtime public servant with over 2 decades of leadership in federal, state, and local government. So has a really ranging and valuable perspective when it comes to AI in public service. She's a graduate of the Partnership's AI Federal Leadership Program, which is run under our Partnership for Public Service Leadership Institute, which is the team that I have the great joy of leading and is done in partnership with the center. Now called our AI Government Leadership Program, since we have welcomed a tremendous number of state and local leaders into that program as well. Kendee brings a strong commitment to fairness and innovation, something that I know we all really value, and is focused on how AI can support culturally responsive care and improve access for underserved communities. And last but certainly not least is Sam Navarro. He is the Strategic Account Executive for Health IT at Microsoft, a really important partner to the work that we do on AI here at the Partnership. He spent over 9 years at the General Services Administration, so has, again, a tremendous breadth of experience from a public service perspective. And his final role was as Director of Client Services for GSA's Technology Transformation Services Group. Earlier in his career, he spent over a decade based in Germany, working on information technology for the US Army. So thank you all for your service in so many different ways, for taking the time for today's conversation and for the incredible, valuable perspectives that I know you're about to share. Really quick, for anyone who isn't familiar with the format, who may be in the audience, each of our panelists is going to spend about 10 minutes to explain 1 or 2 specific AI use cases that have worked in the public sector. And then I'm going to ask some questions and open it up for questions from the audience. So please start thinking now as our presenters share their perspective, experience, and use cases, what you're curious about. We would love to hear that toward the end of the presentation. And I do think, as I've been in conversation about AI with state, local, and federal leaders, one of the recurring questions that I hear is, what are really meaningful use cases? Recognizing that not everything is made for AI, but AI can do amazing things to advance the work that we do for the public. And so that's why we wanted to pull this group together today to really share meaningful perspectives on how you can think about AI from a perspective of service and really getting things done in exciting, new, and impactful ways. And so on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Harrison to present our first use case.
Thank you, Lauren, and really excited to be here and get to share with this great group. As you mentioned, I think what are the best use cases is one of these questions that has been around in a lot of conversations for the past couple of years. And while there's a lot of different ways to deploy AI solutions, one of the areas where that use case question has really arisen is when folks are getting to use these really common, popular, out-of-the-box tools. What does that actually look like for folks? We felt, going all the way back to end of 2023 in the Commonwealth, that there wasn't a great example of when we give our employees some of these out-of-the-box generative AI tools like Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini. What does that actually look like for them to use it in practice? And so when I discuss some of our use cases, I'm going to highlight a pilot program we've done over the past year with OpenAI, where we had roughly 175 employees from the Commonwealth use ChatGPT Enterprise in their day-to-day work. We were the first state government to work with OpenAI and have terms for their enterprise product. And a key feature of this work throughout the past year has been not just giving some of our folks these tools, but really working hand in hand with them throughout the past year to provide training, resources, set them up for success, and then ask them, what does it actually look like for them to use these tools? We conducted roughly 600 surveys with these folks, did a range of focus groups, user interviews. And one of my favorite parts from this work is, one, getting to see some of the different value that folks were able to drive from using these tools, but also folks bringing different opportunities and use cases that we would have never expected from our work where we sit within the Commonwealth. A couple examples that we always like to highlight is we had a range of teams that really found a lot of value kind of across like three big bulks of types of tasks. One being, strategic communicators, where folks were able to, no matter their role, be able to use these types of tools to really kind of level up their communications and make whatever types of communications they were working with internally, better suited for whatever audience they work with. Imagine, some of our technical teams getting to take a lot of the technical specs for projects and be able to reprocess them and make that, easier to communicate with some of the agency or business end users. We had a lot of folks who were using ChatGPT as ways to really drive innovation and brainstorm. And in a lot of government spaces where there's a lot of constraints or processes, how can you be creative and think of new ways to do things and try out ways to drive value? And lastly, a lot of folks we felt were kind of these bureaucracy hackers who in government, right, we have a lot of forms, processes, a lot of text-based items that people need to move, transfer, make sure that you're taking one document and make it suitable for another context. And that was something that we felt our folks were really able to use these tools and again save time and have opportunities to improve their work product. A specific example that I always like to share is we had one of our HR teams where as with most of our folks in our pilot, they were not coming in as ChatGPT AI power users. About half the people in our pilot at large had never used a tool like ChatGPT before when they started. And this team was no different. This team, does a lot of really important and essential work for our HR teams, where they help the Commonwealth navigate our thousands of different job classifications with the different types of position descriptions and postings that teams need to work with. This is the type of function that really helps us, set teams up for success when they're hiring. And as we have a pretty strict, job classification structure in the Commonwealth, there's a really nuanced area of knowing these different classifications and being able to align them with position description. This is not a use that our team would have ever pitched to them, but we were able to give some of these folks these tools and really see to them what stood out in ways that they could help use ChatGPT in this process. They were able to report that they were able to kind of rebuild some of their workflow with ChatGPT. And as one of them described it, move through some of the initial 80% of this work faster, where they're doing some of the matching, looking for redundancies, gaps between, the hiring needs and what the classifications have, but then ultimately use their deep expertise in the space to do that fine tuning at the end to really make sure that they were serving the needs of their agency partners that they were working with. they were able to more kind of dynamically respond to short-term requests, as well as move through some of the backlogs of this work much more quickly. And it's been really great to see, teams like this where, again, this is maybe not a use case we would have brought to them, but when they were empowered with some of these tools, to find different opportunities where it could really be integrated into their workflow and add a lot of value. So, across the board, we've been really excited about this pilot we've done. I would, encourage you all to take a look at a report that we put out that highlights a couple other use cases. But even with kind of some of these out-of-the-box tools, there's definitely opportunities for teams to leverage these and have kind of the best place for them to start exploring with AI.
All right, that's terrific. Thank you, Harrison. It's exciting to see the many ways that it can be used to the benefit of public service in your great state. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kendee for our second use case.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to share how artificial intelligence is being used to meet the needs of the public, both during moments of crisis and in everyday service delivery. I'll be walking through two examples, one from Snohomish County in Washington State during the COVID-19 pandemic, and another from the U.S. Department of Commerce focused on trade. And then I'll just close with a brief glimpse into how I'm currently also exploring AI in the nonprofit health and human services sector through some of the current work that I do at ACRS. So the first example relating to Snohomish County in Washington State was an AI chatbot. And just to give a little bit of background, of what the problem was, in early 2022, Snohomish County became ground zero with the first COVID-19 case in the United States. Residents and businesses urgently needed accurate, up-to-date information on testing, vaccines, public health mandates, and our businesses needed information on ways to access financial support. Our offices in government, as well as other organizations and businesses, were just overwhelmed, and just our staff and our human staff couldn't keep up. So the solution was, in working with Microsoft and another company, the county launched one of the first local government AI-powered chatbots, offering real-time answers 24/7 in multiple languages. It provided information on testing locations, vaccine eligibility, and small business grants. And one of the key things it did is it adapted as guidance and information evolved. The stakeholders that we worked with was the leadership of the county executive's office, emergency management, public health, obviously IT, our small business owners, and the general public. Either play key roles as developers, testers and users, or direct beneficiaries. And we were able to kind of define the success of this with reduced calls, just the volume. And we also ran user satisfaction kind of surveys around it. But really, it boiled down to increased access to reliable information. So it was very, very impactful. I think when it first started, we had over 100,000 inquiries and reduced calls by, I think, about a 40% approximately, just in providing faster information during a really critical time. The second use case, fast forward to a more recent role I had, was bringing some of the AI technology on a federal government level, one of the first for the U.S. Department of Commerce. This particular project is called the Global Business Navigator. And the problem that we were trying to solve were many small and mid-sized U.S. businesses were struggling to navigate the complex landscape of just resources, in particular, federal export and trade support. And inquiries into the federal agency department were high, but often we heard from users it was kind of fragmented. So the solution was the department created the Global Business Navigator, and it was an AI chatbot that helped users explore federal export resources, connect with local trade specialists in cities and states across the US, and also layered in information helping to identify appropriate financing tools, all in one place. One of the interesting parts about the solution, it was a direct idea from who we served, the business community, after a tour that I did traveling through multiple cities across the country. So those that it served were a lot of our American businesses seeking to enter or grow in international markets. We were able to kind of define the success of this, of just, faster access to accurate information for businesses and the public, and just reduce staff response as well, and just increased engagement from actually first-time exporters. The outcomes, I think approximately at the time of our launch, we saw of about 1,000 businesses using this chatbot to quickly access, tailored advice and services from the U.S. government. And it responded in 30 seconds and helping to provide access to government support. And just really lastly, I wanted to lightly touch on in my current role as CEO of the Asian Counseling and Referral Service. It's a nonprofit providing culturally competent health and human services in the Pacific Northwest. We're in our early stages of exploring how AI can enhance our own internal operations. And I just wanted to touch on this because the other two examples were more external facing, but in increasing productivity, strengthening internal communications, and supporting just really overburdened teams, especially in IT and communications, we're currently developing an on-site AI chatbot powered by open source large language model. And the interesting piece of this is it will live entirely in our own infrastructure because we have some pieces to protect client privacy and ensure HIPAA compliance. So once deployed, it will help our staff resolve basic tech issues, locate internal policies, and escalate just more complex needs as well. So our teams are using this now and testing it, and we're really excited about what it can also bring to the team and the nonprofit sector. We're still learning and developing policies that prioritize, security, accessibility, and along with our mission alignment. So just in closing, across local government, federal agencies, including the nonprofit sector, I've just discovered AI is really helping us respond faster, work smarter, and very significantly serve more people. And one of the critical things, success really depends on responsible design, access, and really centering around the communities that we serve. So thank you.
Thank you, Kendee. I really appreciate that. Just to underscore a couple of your last points, I do think even just in the two use case sets we've heard so far, and excited to hear Sam's in a minute, it just shows the breadth of the potential of AI, right? As you look at the federal government, as we look at state governments, also as we look at local governments, really thinking about how people can use this from a perspective of service. How can we use it to scale the good that we do, while also being, of course, really thoughtful and conscious, as we are with all things, about the risks involved and making sure that we're using it in the best possible way. And so in the Q&A, we're going to come back to some of these questions around how do you use AI really successfully? What are some of the best lessons and pieces of advice that you have all picked up along the way? But I'm excited to hear what Sam has to share before we go to a broader Q&A. Sam, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Lauren. And I want to thank the Partnership of Public Service for the invitation. It's just really an honor to share this panel with Kendee and Harrison this afternoon. So hi, everybody. Sam Navarro from Microsoft. As was stated, I have 20 years of government experience prior to being at Microsoft, so I'm relatively new to the industry side of the equation. But kind of a key theme that Harrison and Kendee kind of elevated that really resonated with me is scale, right? And Lauren just alluded to it, that literally everything we do within the public sector space is done at scale, right? For at a minimum 350 million US citizens across our diaspora. And then on top of that, right, folks that come to visit for whatever reason, whether it's on a passport to do a schooling or right visiting us, etc. So everything the government does, we do at a large scale, even sometimes larger than our industry partners, right? And so a lot of the use cases that we've honed in on is how to make even simple tasks more simple and increase the productivity of every public servant across the board. I think what kind of brings every public servant together, as we know, is a sense of duty, right? Understanding that what we do is for that end citizen, that average person out there who relies on Social Security benefits, right? Or Medicaid and Medicare, right? The CHIPS program in and of itself supports 33% of all of our children. And I like to say that I was a recipient when I was smaller, by the way, of CHIPS. And I'm super grateful that that benefit was there, right? So I could get access to healthcare when I was a small kid, to a single mother, right? So everything that we do is so important and drives trust, which is what I think we all want in the public servants that come to these offices and these spaces day to day to deliver value to every citizen. And some of the use cases that I've been involved in have kind of crossed the spectrum, from helping Medicaid and Medicare to the CDC, as Kendee said during the pandemic, deliver timely information and data to people to make informed decisions on their health, to the General Services Administration to buy the things that we were buying in a more smart manner, with smart technologies. And I want to bring to the surface some that hopefully can cross the spectrum, no matter what agency or part of government you're at, whether you're state, local, or federal. I think some of these things are common across the board. So one of the use cases that I saw drove a lot of value, especially now in these times of increasing public trust, has been Freedom of Information Act use cases. I think all of us as public servants have gotten a Freedom of Information Act request. One of the biggest challenges in providing the public the information they need and they deserve is redacting information that may be of harm to someone else, right? And we've been able to build generative AI solutions that highlight areas of redaction where needed, whether there's PII embedded in a specific document or other information that may be critical to national security, and remove that information before it's provided to the public, so that it provides the public the information they need, but at no harm to somebody else. And so the challenge with government is we don't just get one or two Freedom of Information Act requests, right? Anybody who's been part of a agency knows this is a continual life cycle and stream of information that's being asked by the media, by just concerned citizens, right? Or industry partners who may just be interested in why a specific policy was swayed one way or another. And so government needs to figure out how to build tools that do this at scale and have a human in the loop, by the way, right? Because there's things that the AI may miss, right? Or there's redactions the AI may overcompensate for that may not necessarily be needed to redact for public consumption. And we've been able to do that at scale across the board. I think that's one use case that every agency can tap into. Another one is tied to a space that's near and dear to my heart, accessibility. I think that 508 compliance is very important for all of us in public service. We know that the disability community is a community that any of us can join at any time, right, for any reason. And so being accessible to the disabled community is very important to public agencies. And I've been delighted to work with various agencies to build tools to make sure that every single part of content that they put out there is 508 compliant. It's accessible to people that are hard of hearing or may have visual issues. And that's a challenge for a lot of agencies that may have a large footprint with a lot of data and a lot of content out there across various websites, to have someone assigned to do that on their own, right? I think a more time-effective way to leverage an AI solution would be to have an AI scour the entire platform or footprint of an agency, right? And then pull information that may be highlighted as not being 508 compliant, and then a human can interact and interface and make sure it is, and then republish it. So that's been a great use case that I think really can scale. is a tremendous value, because we want to make sure any information that the government puts out is accessible to everyone, right? And then last but not least, right now for some agencies, the largest deployment of generative AI that they're facing with that they're dealing with is Copilot deployment across the agencies. And we're excited to see just a lot of the ideas that are coming from users to Microsoft saying, hey, it'd be great if Copilot had a connector to my system of record, right? Because now instead of having to derive a white paper on my own, the AI literally could go ahead and pull the information I need, publish it onto my Word document, and then I could fix it and tweak it as I need. And I get done faster with the white paper asked by leadership than previous times where I had to pull the information manually, right? Sort it out, figure out what it meant, and then create a white paper from scratch. So we're 100% focused on making sure successful Copilot deployments across various agencies. For us, it means increased productivity in the hands of every public servant. And we hope that it can save everyone at least an hour or two in your day to be able to deliver more value to citizens. And I just want to take this time to say, as a former public servant, I know it goes without being said a lot, we just really appreciate and value everyone who's raised their right hand and taken an oath to be in any office, in any capacity across government. And we hope that AI is helping you do what you do best, even better, right? Everyone who's come to public service has come to do an amazing job for the citizens of this nation. And we just want to make sure that we're empowering you guys to be able to fully invest yourself in a career that's rewarding, that gives back to your soul, right? And also enables you to do a lot in service to our country. So that's all I had, Lauren. Back to you.
Thanks, Sam. I really appreciate that. And just to underscore, coming off of Public Service Recognition Week, which should really be every week of the year, we are unbelievably appreciative here at the partnership in all of the ways that people serve across federal, state, and local government. And we have a public service leadership model that we use at the center of all of our programming that we also often talk about when we work with folks across levels of government around our AI government leadership programming. And maybe the most important part of that model is that at the center, it's focused on service and focused on stewardship of the American public. And that's what makes, to me and to so many others, public service so special and really something that should be rewarded and valued all of the time and not just 1 week a year. So with that, I want to get the audience starting to think about questions. As we alluded to earlier, we're going to have space for audience questions. That said, I have so many questions for our panelists that I could easily fill the time, but I'm sure there will be curiosities and we're happy to raise them up if folks share them out. One thing I want to add in context for our first question, I spent the last 3 days at a national conference with leaders from states all across the country. And no surprise, AI came up in so many of the conversations that I was having. And you have folks, just like in our program, who are really new to AI and feel like they're trying to get sort of a handle on what this means for them and how they can use this for public service. You have some folks who are much more experienced and are really delving into the details. But the one thing that I consistently heard from state leaders all across the country that I hear at the federal and local level as well is, how best can I use AI? What are the biggest lessons that I can take away from people who are really knowledgeable in this space and that I can take back with me? And so presuming that we have a lot of people from a similar perspective in the audience who are really wondering, what are the best takeaways? What are the best lessons as they endeavor to focus on AI within their own communities? That's the question that I'm going to throw out at you. And because I know I was actually talking to 2 senior leaders from the Commonwealth, Harrison, just yesterday about this, I know that you guys are being really innovative in Pennsylvania on how you think about using AI to the benefit of the public and the folks that you serve. So I'm going to tee you up, if you don't mind, to kick us off with what is a big lesson that you have learned in your work on AI and how it can be best implemented in government.
Yeah, great question, and right, I think so just foundational to this work. Part of what's been interesting about this moment is whether it's kind of from more technical implementations or from the tools that are now at our fingertips, there's so many different things AI can do. And I think it's really, tempting to kind of be looking for the solutions and how can, AI can do this thing, how can we plug it into this space? And I think what we really try to do in our work is reframe it a little bit where we're not looking for AI use cases. We have a range of problems that our teams are trying to solve and they're working really hard on them. And where, when, and how is AI maybe the right tool for the context of that team to help drive value in that problem? And I think that's the right framing for, all of our technology work in government to drive better service delivery for folks. But to us, what really is going to make, using AI successful or not is not, the more or less AI spectrum. It's, where do we have clear problems where this is the right tool and we can set folks up for success? And so I think always, there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of lists of AI use cases, but I think that's been the framing that we found a lot of value from, and definitely has been kind of a lesson learned as well throughout the process.
That's terrific. I love that piece about where is AI the right tool, right? Stepping back for a second and remembering what the right framing is as you come into the conversation, Harrison, to your point, I think is one of the most crucial things that you can do. Making sure that you're not jumping in from a place of just trying to solve every problem with an AI perspective. There are places where that can be tremendously useful, but encouraging everyone to step out of that conversation for a minute and say, what do I really want to solve for my community, for my constituents, and where can AI be the right tool in that process? So appreciate that. Sam, can I throw it over to you and then Kendee for a big lesson that you've learned when it comes to use of AI?
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree more with Harrison. He's spot on from a first principles perspective. Identify what the business need is first, right? Sometimes I think we lead with the technology in search of a problem, where you should find a problem and then in search for the technology. And I kind of want to caveat that with some of the questions we're seeing in the queue here, because I think Stacy kind of connected with that a little bit and said, can we talk about the cost of developing these tools and how many people, et cetera, et cetera. And what I was respond kind of to this question and Stacy's question as well is, Harrison's right, define the business need first, and then incorporate from my perspective, I think the tip of the spear is your acquisitions people first, right? Make sure that you do extensive market research and analysis of what's out there. You can always put out an RFI, request for information in industry, and then leverage that to build then what the potential solutions are out there that can address the problem. I think also that can tie into building your independent government cost estimate, your IGCE, because then as you find specific tools that help you build kind of a spectrum of what can solve for the business need, you're going to also be able to find pricing for those tools, right? And some of these may exist in the cloud. Some of these may be native and generated directly on your desktop, depending on what the best business case is. And, it's a panel on AI, but, just to kind of dovetail back on Harrison's point, right? RPA tools, right, can still solve a lot of interesting challenges. And there are other tools that also can automate, right, and bring value. So just look at those as well. But what I've seen works definitely is the sooner you bring in your acquisition team that's eventually going to have to buy these things for you, right, the better, so that they can get a good idea of what you're looking for, and if there's an acquisition path to buy the capability, and it's for you to bring it into the enterprise and then harness that solution for value.
Thanks, Sam. Kendee, why don't I throw it over to you?
Yeah. The biggest lesson, I think, that AI is only as good as the people and processes behind it. It's not a plug and play solution. It really requires cross-functional collaboration, regular updates, user feedback loops, and above all, what I think is echoed with the earlier speakers, clarity about the problem you're trying to solve. So, we're referencing back in Snohomish County in Washington State, for example, the AI chatbot worked well during COVID because public health, IT, communications, and leadership were aligned on the urgency and scope. That was actually done in about 48 hours. And it's just a great example of what government, I think, can do. And at Commerce, on a federal level, it really worked because our team, our trade experts, helped shape the knowledge base And AI, I think one thing to remember is a tool, not necessarily a strategy. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Two things that I'm hearing that really resonate with me, both from you, Sam, and you, Kendee, is thinking about the broader ecosystem, right? This is something that we hear a lot from folks who are in our program, that we're helping people, and we're going to come to the leadership perspective in a minute, but making sure that it's not just one person against a problem, that you're really thinking about who is your team, how do you collaborate across teams, who are your stakeholders, are you thinking about it in a thoughtful way so that you can scale the solution, so that, Sam, to your point, you're getting the input of the people who you're going to need as part of the process, and you're not doing that as a vacuum at the outset. So I love all those points, and something that we hear from a lot of folks in our programs. So the second question I'm going to treat a little bit as a lightning round, because it relates to our first question. Then we're going to jump into sort of what it means to be a great leader in this space. But if you had one short form piece of advice to give to folks who are thinking about leveraging AI in the state and local space, you can either encapsulate what you just shared or share something new. What would be your sort of quick takeaway? I'll give everybody just a second, and then maybe Kendee and Sam and Harrison, we can go in that order.
Great. Lightning round. I'd say start small and build with purpose. Don't wait for the perfect enterprise-wide system. Instead, pick a use case that's high volume and low risk, even if it's like responding to frequently, asked questions or routing service tickets.
So my kind of idea, and just full transparency, I am a cybersecurity major, but think with security in mind up front, right? Not later on down the process. I think we're moving to a place where instead of just buying the large language model in and of itself, because there's so many and the market has been proliferated with so many different large language models, that now I think agencies should be thinking about, how do I buy a platform that, regardless of what the large language model is, right, I can incorporate it to a use case, but all of that has to be thought, with the security of that has to be thought in advance prior to it being procured.
Harrison?
Yeah, definitely echo both previous lightning recommendations. One thing I would add is I think in this work, establishing some of those feedback loops are really important. Whether, again, it's employees using tools or we have a larger implementation in kind of this untested space, being able to make sure that we're following up and understanding, are we accomplishing that goal is really key for this work.
I think that's a perfect dovetail into our next question. We're going to focus a little bit on the leadership aspect of this. So Kendee, to your point about starting small and with purpose, Harrison, to your point just now about following up, it makes me think one of the lines that I use once in a while on our leadership work is, and forgive me because it sounds a little bit cliche perhaps, is the notion of like, you are the leader that you've been waiting for. And what I mean by that is there's no perfect person coming along who knows everything, who has a handle on every situation, who has full knowledge, especially in these newer spaces, who is going to do it perfectly. So part of it is the willingness to kind of roll up your sleeves and try something new and doing it in a thoughtful way. And it takes really good skilled leaders from all levels of leadership, right? We think of leaders often as the most senior people, but we have emerging leaders within our government organizations. We have incredible sort of mid-level leaders who supervise others and serve in that leadership capacity. And we have really senior leaders who are driving the vision and really being thoughtful about how things get done from the top-down perspective. And so when you think about the use cases that you worked with in particular, or more broadly, as you think about this space, how do you think about how leadership plays a role in that? And in particular, what are the kind of leaders that you see as needed in this space to really achieve the collective results that you guys are all talking about?
Yeah, I'll tee up on that first, because I've seen incredible leaders who are behind the scenes working very, very hard, right? And are unsung heroes across the space. And I wouldn't mention one in this panel because they don't look for the credit, right? They just want to see the outcomes. I think I've seen tremendous leaders that have become kind of the chief question officers of their agency. And what I mean by that is as Harrison alluded to, analyzing really what is the business need and what is the problem we're trying to solve. And then kind of tied within those questions is, what's the optimal user experience that we want to deliver, a citizen experience that we want to deliver in providing that capability to the public. CX is going to be a critical piece of AI adoption, because harness behind the business need is, does it simplify what I'm doing in a way that is easy for all of us to adopt? I think ChatGPT, as Harrison alluded to, is one of the first use cases where we saw easy adoption across the market because it was easy to use, right? And then in comparison, and no hits on IBM, right? But in comparison to Watson, right? I remember the Watson days. I was in the Department of Defense. We were trying to figure out, well, how do we incorporate this technology? It looks great, but how do we incorporate it to our day-to-day jobs? And I think if you have leaders who ask the right questions up front, you can deliver a product that's simple and easy to use and adopt on the back end, right? And so chief question officers, we need a lot of those, and hopefully asking the right questions to deliver value, right, for the public and their users.
Thanks, Sam. I'm going to steal that for what it's worth, if you don't mind, chief question officers. I was talking to someone just yesterday, and something we come back to all the time in the leadership work that we do is curiosity. You don't want to be the person who is the best at speaking all the time. You want to be the person who is the best at asking thoughtful questions and being really inquisitive, and then synthesizing that information and sharing with others. So I think that's an excellent point. Harrison, can I toss it over to you, and then Kendee, have you on deck?
Yeah, I think when we think about our work, leadership has really been critical, and it's come from a lot of different corners, with this initial pilot and some of the initial foundations to our governance for AI. The Shapiro administration and our governor's office has really done a great job in terms of building kind of that vision of how we can be proactive as opposed to reactive in this work. And then it's come, from a lot of our different agencies and teams and partners that we've worked with. AI right now is a topic that isn't just in the back offices, of our IT departments. It's showing up in different edge cases in different ways across our teams. And we really try to make a point of being able to engage with different teams, see what's, popping up as opportunities or challenges for them, and how can we take all of that and continue to set folks up for success. So, I really like that word curiosity with this, because I think when we think about leadership and supporting this work and being able to build those relationships and deepen those connections across our different agency stakeholders, AI is an opportunity to do that, and it helps, again, set this work up for success.
Thanks, Harrison. I think you added that sort of second essential piece, which is the curiosity is so valuable, but you got to add collaboration to it, right? So that we're actually then able to leverage what we're learning and what we're being curious about and really bringing it to a broader audience like you're doing in your work. So Kendee, over to you.
Yeah, we just say leadership was essential in all three examples that I already spoke about. In Snohomish County, which was the case where, we had technology that we were using during the pandemic, the county executive's office, county executive Dave Summers, created the urgency and gave the green light to act quickly. It came from the top level in support in any way that was needed. And I echo that with my second example at the Department of Commerce. Senior leaders pushed for tools that would expand access and serve our businesses better. And when I say that, it came directly from the highest level cabinet member, Secretary Armando, who I directly, worked with and reported up to on this project. So I just use those two examples because I really think it highlights just the leadership that is needed for advancement in this area, and what the art of the possible is when teams are supported to actually make things become a reality, and how swiftly they can actually be executed to ultimately, help the public. So that's, I think the best example I could give.
That's so helpful. So in the spirit of time and in the spirit of our second question earlier, I'm going to throw back at all of you sort of the lightning round version of this same question before we go to audience Q&A. And so as you think about skills or training or resources that folks in government could use to feel really confident in their venture forward with AI, what comes to mind for you? Any of the above? Some skill you find essential, training resource you found really valuable, other resource that has been crucial to government leaders as they move forward in this work. With that, since Kendee, you just spoke, why don't we stick it with you for just a minute and then go to Harrison and Sam.
Yeah, lightning round again. I'd say we need more than just technical upskilling. Data literacy and prompt engineering matter, but so do, which I think Samuel mentioned, procurement reform, ethical oversight, and one thing that I'd underscore is user-centered design as well.
Yeah, when we think, I think also about our workforce at large, just having some very clear foundational AI resources for folks we think is really valuable. A quick example I'll give is, right now, most folks, right, when they use a search engine, there's often a generative AI response that comes. That's, hard for organizations, teams to opt out of, but we know a lot of folks are trying to understand, what does this mean? How do we use it? We think in this AI moment, even just some of those really foundational kind of what is going on right now, what is AI, is a really great starting point for our workforce at large.
Yeah, I mean, Kendee covered very well the training aspect. I wholeheartedly agree with every piece that she brought up. And prompt engineering, she's spot on, is going to be critical moving forward, because you got to understand how to interact with the thing in order to get the outcomes you're looking for. But I would just dovetail in with the resources. I'd say every agency needs to build a second team, right? Partnership for Public Service is one great nonprofit, but nonprofits and academia is a great way to get access to really smart people at zero cost to the citizen, right? Other than an investment on the agency's time. And what I love about nonprofit organizations and academia is you can get feedback in a way that isn't necessarily vendor biased, right? You come to Microsoft, we'll give you the Microsoft take, right? That's what I get paid to do, right? And vice versa. But you go to a lot of these nonprofits or academic institutions, you can get a really unbiased take and at zero investment other than your time.
Thanks, Sam. I really appreciate that. So we're going to jump into a couple of the audience questions. Kendee, I'm going to pair a couple together that you can take separately if you want, but to me, they strike a similar chord around integrity of data and being thoughtful about client information. And so the first one is asking you to talk about how you created a closed infrastructure to protect client info and your own proprietary data. And then the second one is that when you were thinking about a commerce AI system, how did you keep integrity of data and ensure that the chatbot understood the questions? So if you want to take those from a specificity point, feel free. If you want to zoom out and talk a little bit about how you think about having closed systems and how you think about protecting data, I think that would be really valuable for the audience.
Yeah, and this kind of goes to the earlier question, I think, that you just previously asked, but I think teams need sandboxes to test AI applications safely, and shared resources like open source models and templates. And in both the government kind of use cases and in the Department of Commerce, right? We had sandboxes that were tested, and for the Department of Commerce one, it was very limited in our initial pilot launch to a certain number of pages and content that had already been approved, right? And we knew would be secure. So, again, I think leading back to some of my previous answers, starting small, where there's low risk, right? And thoroughly testing it with the users in mind, but also I think most critically with the teams that use the information, the government employees that know it, right? I think it is really, really key.
Thanks, Kendee. I really appreciate that. I'm going to go to a question in the chat for you, Harrison. But before I do, one thing to note for all of our participants, but broadly that I've come across as well, I find in some leaders, because AI has been around just long enough and is sort of just enough in the popular conversation that they feel like they should know about it, but they haven't been close enough to it to feel like they really do know about it. One of the things we talk a lot about in our program is it's still okay to say, I don't know this basic thing about AI, or I want to have a better understanding, and just come to that, to Harrison's point earlier, from a place of curiosity. One of the things that I think is almost a risk with some folks in government on AI is the hesitancy to say, you know, I don't fully understand this, right? It's a really complex ecosystem. There are so many, even the people who really understand it don't fully understand it. And so just encourage folks in the audience and broadly speaking to make it okay in organizations to say, hey, this isn't something that I fully understand, but I would really love to learn together and think about using, Sam, to your point, nonprofits and other great resources to get smart on some of the work that's being done in this space, so that we don't leave anybody behind in the process of learning. So Harrison, over to you. This person alludes to you talking about bureaucracy hackers, and their question is, have you encountered further cases where an already sort of undocumented business process becomes even more murky? How can you mitigate that risk? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I would echo, some of the themes we've heard, where part of our pilot in exploring that and what we saw from folks was in itself, a small test to see what might work and what wouldn't. And I definitely think that there were definitely some use cases, from our folks where, they tried to use ChatGPT or AI tools to help with certain undocumented process, and it didn't necessarily have the result that they were looking for. And Lauren, to your point you were just making as well, in our pilot, our goal was not just to collect feedback on everything that worked 100% of the time, right? It was to understand what were some of the challenges and opportunities folks saw. So I think when, as Kendee's mentioned, you're starting small, you're doing some of this testing, you're really scoping it out. Like having sometimes those processes where it doesn't work quite as well is also really valuable, and it helps us learn and grow. So yes, that definitely happened at times. But that was, I think, for us, kind of part of the initial small footprint of this pilot to help set us up for success for future work for employees.
Thanks, Harrison. I'm conscious of the fact that we are coming against time, so I'm going to throw a quick question to our three panelists, and then we'll start wrapping up the conversation. So one of the things that really strikes me in this conversation, we've talked about your own experiences in local government and state government and the federal government, also from the nonprofit side, from the corporate side, right? There's this huge sort of ecosystem and universe of potential partners as we think about this broader space and how we can do more in service to the public with AI. So coming back to a theme that Harrison, you and Sam and Kendee have really all talked about, which is collaboration in this space. When you think about the wealth of actors involved in this ecosystem, what are some of your quick thoughts on how we can innovate together and collaborate to get to an even better place?
Yeah, I think that the work that Partnerships for Public Service is doing is critical for us to continue the dialogue. And we need to go out there and recruit more of our fellow public servant leaders to come into this space and contribute their thoughts, their ideas, what they're finding works in agencies, so that we can quickly scale and share a lot of this information that's happening sometimes in silos in a small agency. But if you elevate it, then there's other agencies that can deploy it and utilize that information, that wealth of knowledge within their space. So I think definitely leveraging the nonprofit community is going to be key. I think second to that is going to be recruitment of really smart folks into government. And what I can say is this: we understand human capital and finding the right talent is a race that we're all in, right? From a Microsoft perspective, we're in it as well. How do we galvanize the next generation of technologists to serve, right? I think about the times of President Kennedy, where he formed the USAID, right, to go out and advance the mission of giving back, right? Or when I joined the military, right, it wasn't a decision on saying, hey, how can I get more bang for the buck on my studies here? But how can I serve, right? How can I give back to the country? And the more and more I speak to young people, I see just a real need for being something bigger than just ourselves. And I think that's the drawing that public service can have to smart, innovative, technical young people who are leaving our universities, to probably give it 4 or 5 years, right, at public service before going out to industry. And so I'll encourage everyone who's on this call and may have a young person in your household, right, to consider a little small stint of their time in public service, as a small way to get back on that well invested time, money, and effort in university, right, to be able to drive value, right, for our country and our nation that desperately needs it, I think in so many areas at this time.
Thanks, Sam. All right. Well, conscious that it is already 12:56 somehow, we have not figured out how to use AI to slow time just yet, but we'll see where we get with that. Before I turn it over to Jake, I want to thank our incredible panelists for their perspectives, for their service, for their time. And Sam, to your point, we would love here at the Partnership for Public Service and the AI Center and the work that we do in the Public Service Leadership Institute, we would love to engage with folks across levels of government to build on the incredible perspectives and journey that we've already gone on with so many public servants through our AI programs. We want to share stories. So if folks in the audience have other stories like Harrison and Sam and Kendee about what's really working, let's share that out with more people across the country so they can benefit from your perspectives or benefit from your mistakes. That's fine too, right? This is going to be a process for all of us, and it's not always going to be an entirely smooth road. So with thanks also to Jennifer Ives and Amanda and Jake for making so much of the AI work possible and the broader team, and certainly to my team who spends so much time with public servants across levels of government thinking about how we can be great stewards of AI. And with an invitation, we've really ramped up our AI leadership programming for folks at all levels of government. We have hundreds of folks actively working with us right now. We have a lot of opportunities for that coming later this year. So we are here to support you, broadly speaking, folks in government in any way that we can. And Harrison, Sam, and Kendee, any ways that we can be partners to you and the incredible work that you guys are doing in your states, in communities, and corporations, we would love to partner and just be a further help on that front. So with that, I'm going to throw it back to Jake and wish everyone a happy Friday.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for expertly leading us through that conversation. And thank you so much to our panelists, to Harrison, to Kendee, and to Sam for sharing your time. In the interest of sharing time, one quick ask that I have of all of you is my colleague Amanda is going to put a link into the chat to a very short survey. I promise there's only 2 required questions, and they're both multiple choice. So I promise you can do it very quickly, but it's extremely valuable for us to understand how these events are and how can we do better in the future. There is an optional 3rd question if you would like to provide feedback about this event or ideas for future events. We read every single one of those and take them into account as we think about what we're going to do moving forward. Of course, the other links you'll see there to visit our the AI Center website, follow us on LinkedIn to learn about future events. This event has been recorded. It will be posted to the Partnership's YouTube channel. And so in the coming week, you will receive an email that will have a link to the recording as well as a blog post recap that we'll have. Please share it far and wide so that these valuable insights that have been shared by panelists today can reach as broad an audience as possible. Again, thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Lauren. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Jake.